Welcome to the first Ashland Planning Board meeting of 2019. It is January 10th. We are in the Selectmen's Meeting Room at Town Hall, and we are being recorded and broadcast on WACA cable access, and we thank them for that. We have a number of items on the agenda. 0 Tri Street, I believe, is just being continued. We have some talk about what's going on in the Rail Transit District with the senior housing that has been proposed. We have a public hearing to amend the planning board fees. We have a site plan modification on McGunko, a lot release, and a couple other typical type things. So with that, let's get straight into it. This is also our first meeting without a town planner. I believe we're in the process of advertising a new position, so we have our assistant town planner with us tonight. You want to say hi to people who haven't seen you at a planning board meeting before, who are watching at home?
Sure. Hi, I'm Amanda Molina-Dumas, assistant town planner, and if you've watched the ZBA meetings in the past month or so, I've been there too, so I'll be helping out until Sheila's replacement is found.
All right, thank you. So our first item of business is 0 Tri Street. This is a cluster development proposal, and there's been lots of issues with, is this a perennial stream? Is it not? Is it wetlands? Can they build here? Can they not build here? And that's been tied up for quite a while, and apparently that is not resolved. And so tonight we have a request to continue. What do we have for the continuance on this?
I don't think they set a... They didn't ask for a specific amount of time, but Sheila said 60 days.
Do they have a, do we have a
extension?
Letter.
Yes, in section 2.
Okay.
So an email followed up by a letter, right there.
Okay. Please consider this a request for an extension for an additional 60 days. Is there a motion to accept their extension for another 60 days?
So moved.
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Abstentions?
I'm abstaining.
Okay, that passes 301. So that just gives us an extra 60 days on any planning board deadlines to reach a decision. So let's move this.
Can I ask just a question on this while we're on this topic?
Yeah, that's
briefly? Fine. So this has effectively been continued for a very, very, very long time.
Like a year.
Yeah. So if this ever actually comes before us, I think we need to kind of get a whole, I think this needs to be relayed out again, kind of in full.
Yeah, we also may not even be able to have a voting quorum because of members who've missed more than one meeting.
Right.
Like members who weren't on the board when this started.
Yeah.
So we may need to have them withdraw and resubmit, and they're doing that simply to clear the board and start over again. We would typically waive most of the fees, apart from what's necessary for advertising and mailing, for re-announcing the public hearing portion. But at this point, until they're really ready and know what they're doing, unless they're going to come back and be serious about it, they don't need to, they wouldn't need to do that yet. We can just keep going on with continuances.
Okay.
So with that, I think Thursday, March 14th would be our first meeting in March. Does that make sense?
Sounds good.
I'll entertain a motion to continue this public hearing and discussion to Thursday, March 14th at 7:15.
So moved.
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? That passes 4-0. All right, our next item is a public discussion continued from December 13th. In collaboration with town officials and United Group of Companies, UCG, a zoning amendment is being proposed which would allow the developer to build up to 180 62-plus age-restricted garden apartment style multifamily dwellings. The units will have 1 and 2 bedrooms, and 25% of units will be affordable. The project is proposed to be similar in density to the nearby Cirrus Apartments and will preserve a portion of the property for open space. The zoning amendment would increase the allowed density, increase the allowed height, while maintaining the buffer required in current zoning. Interested residents are invited to learn more and share their opinions about this proposed zoning amendment. And just to be clear, we are not in a public hearing on a zoning amendment right now. This is a informal discussion about what might or might not become a zoning change. I don't know that a zoning change is even, the text has even been written. The idea is when we reach that stage, we don't come and people say, well, you need to make these changes, but it's been advertised, so we can't make those changes, or there's a town meeting and it's on the warrant and it's outside the four corners. By having this informal discussion at this stage, we get to, it's an open book and we can do whatever we want. So when it comes time to actually do a zoning change, hopefully we can have everybody on the same page, the developer, the planning board, the residents, and hopefully it'll be a smooth process. So that said, my understanding is the town manager, who unfortunately wasn't able to make it to the last one, has some new information about possibilities here and would like to talk to us about this.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good evening and Happy New Year to you all. It's good to see you again. Michael Herbert, Town Manager. So I just want to reiterate something that you said, Preston, and just for those watching at home and those here in the audience, we are not looking at a town meeting a special town meeting in February. I think that was brought up before in December, and if we had had enough information, would be able to have the enough time to put something together, that was a possibility, but clearly we are beyond that point. So I just want to allay anybody's concerns about having a town meeting in February, so we're not under the gun in this way. Second, I do want to apologize for not being able to make it at the last meeting. It was one of those situations where I think I caught what half of Ashland has caught, and I could not make it. I made a judgment call to go ahead and continue. In hindsight, I probably should have just said, let's just hold off until I can attend, because I'm afraid what happened was that a lot of the intentions and what we're trying to do didn't necessarily get communicated, and so I think it left a lot of the residents feeling, having more questions than answers and having some concerns. And I have met with them since then, and we've talked about that. So just let me tell you about, or let me talk about what we were trying to do when we talked about the rail transit district back at town meeting. If in your packet, what I have included is really what was allowed and what was proposed prior to town meeting in 2018, November 2018. What the zoning allowed and what currently, or what was there, was 38 acres. That was, all of it was allowed to be developed. This plan right here is 109 what they call carriage homes. They would be townhomes. They were 55 plus, and if there was any affordable component, of which there were 10% was going to be designated affordable here, you would still have to allow children in those residents because of fair housing laws and more bureaucratic stuff like that. Also, with the 10% affordable, this was also these were also considered ownership units. So the thing is if you do ownership units and you do 10%, or even if you did 25%, you could only count that percentage towards your affordable housing inventory. And then, as you can also see here, just very clearly, the entire lot was covered, and that was allowed under the existing zoning. So what were we trying to do with the rail transit district when we talked about it at November town meeting? So I think the first thing that we were trying to do is preserve as much green space on that lot 2 as possible. Green space is very, very important to us as a town. It's one of the things that we treasure, one of the things we value. We also wanted to look at any way that we could protect our neighborhoods, especially the abutters on Lorraine and Wilbur, since they basically abut right next to that property, that Lot 2 property. We wanted to provide affordable housing units for our seniors. That's something that we definitely lack here. It's something that our senior community has called for. Affordable units so that they can remain here in Ashland. And I think that's very important as well for us as a community, not just for those seniors. And then the third goal is to make progress towards our affordable housing inventory, which in turn protects us against unwanted 40B developments like we had at the Valentine estate, which we ultimately ended up purchasing at a premium because we had not done that planning ahead of time and that foresight ahead of time. So those were really the three goals that we were trying to accomplish. And the way we were going to accomplish those goals were really twofold. So the first is what we did is we purchased a big chunk of practically all of Lot 3 of the RTD. And as part of that, we were able to gain a development restriction for open space on at least 50% to 2/3 of Lot 2, which is the lot that we're talking about. So that was going to be preserved as green space as part of that transaction. And then the second vehicle we were going to utilize to achieve these goals was to do this zoning, a zoning change, and basically create zoning and create an agreement that would shrink the development footprint, and ultimately it would create 150 apartments to 180 apartments. And one of the reasons why it was so important to change it to apartments is because we were going to do 25% affordable as opposed to 10%. And because they're rental units and because we're doing 25%, we're actually able to count all 150 to 180 units towards our affordable housing inventory, which would essentially give us safe harbor from 40B developments for 2 years, plus add 2% onto our affordable housing inventory to help us get to that 10% number. So we were approached by a developer, a group called United Group of Companies, who were looking to expand into the New England market. They do senior developments all around the country, primarily, go figure, Florida and New York. They were looking to get into New England, and they put out a pretty good product. But I can say that, and we can talk about it, but until you have something to look at, it's really kind of hard. It's really kind of subjective, right? So what I also have provided in your packet is essentially that Lot 2 site plan, or that Lot 2 map. And what they have done is they have superimposed one of their more recent developments, a development called Schuyler Commons, that's done in New York. They essentially superimposed it onto this site right here. And it basically gives you an idea of what 144 units in 4 buildings, 3 apartment buildings and 1 clubhouse would look like if you just superimposed it. You're still able to maintain that 100-foot buffer. Obviously you still have all of this green space here. I think we can actually do better. I think we can develop zoning that would, in exchange for pulling this development back further away from the property line at Lorraine and Wilbur, they could go up another story. I think what was maybe miscommunicated unintentionally at the last town meeting was that we talked, or not town meeting, but planning board meeting, was we talked about a change in height, right? But not necessarily talking about a corresponding pullback from the property line. So I think people had the impression that they were going to have a similar situation as High Street, where you go down you go up High Street and you look up and you have these houses that are looking up at these, large apartment buildings already up on a cliff. That's actually what we're trying to avoid
So that'd be
here in
further
this
down the
situation.
slope, Michael?
I'm sorry?
Would that be further down the slope? Everything, it's all,
Yeah.
I mean, you could go a little higher, you're saying, because of the elevation change?
Well, you could
So
go a
it
little
means
bit higher
visible?
because you would be pulling it back from this property line. So, John, these are the homes on Lorraine and Wilbur. And I'm, obviously it's hard to see the topo lines here, but these are the homes on Lorraine and Wilbur, okay? In exchange for pulling it back further away, again, way beyond this 100-foot buffer, they would be able to go another story. And so that's really what we're trying to accomplish with this zoning change, those goals, and also pulling it back a little bit more. I should also say I think the planning board should have the ability, in order to determine what the best project is, to either put it here on this part of the parcel or here. So we haven't, chosen which space is going to be the open space that we've talked about before.
Can I ask a question, because it's informal?
If he's ready, but you do need to come to the microphone,
Yeah.
because there are people at home who wouldn't be able to hear you otherwise.
Excuse me for 1 second. Hi, Peter Dana, 41 Wilbur Drive. What exactly are we talking about in terms of exchanging the pullback and increasing the buffer? Okay.
I think probably the easiest way to look at it is, if you pulled it back another 100 feet from that 100-foot buffer, so let's say you expand that Apple Ridge 100-foot buffer that's called Zone F, that's classified in zoning. If you pulled that back another 100 feet, you'd be able to go up another story. Ultimately, I think
So from 3 stories to 4 stories, or?
3 stories to 4 stories, yeah. And also in your packet, what I wanted to present was just this is what one of their 4-story buildings looks like. So we talk about things in terms of stories and not height, in terms of feet. I was a little bit surprised when I saw this. I thought the 4-story building would be a little bit taller. That's not necessarily the case. But I'm trying to think, again, so why we're talking about 150 units through site plan, 180 units through special permit. So why does that make sense? Well, believe it or not, if you did, I'm looking at total building area. So let's just say a developer said, okay, we could do 150 units at 1,000 square feet each. They're going to be 1,000 square feet, or 180 units at 750 square feet. Well, believe it or not, the 180 unit development is actually going to 750 square feet each. The 180 unit development is actually going to be a total of 15,000 square feet smaller than the 150 unit option. So again, it's the zoning would give the planning board the ability to design a better project and figure out what would work out best. Again, not just to meet the town goals, but also the neighborhood goals as well. So again, very, very general, very high level. Thoughts, concerns, questions?
My only concern, and I can't really get a visual from what I have in front of me, is the topography and where you put the structure, how that affects visibility from the neighborhood. That would be my biggest question, and it would take a lot more information to be able to see, to paint that picture for me.
I would agree, John. I think when I met with some of the residents over the weekend, I kind of was under the impression that everybody would be for the development being on the upper part, right? But actually, that was my. I thought going into that meeting,
Well,
I thought that's
if
what
it
was
was
going to be better. But they were
upper,
actually.
Maybe if you're referring to elevation, then that would make it more visible.
I know, and that's what we talked about.
That was
So
my question earlier when I interjected. It was about the slope. That's what I was trying to get a picture of. Would you be below the tree line, or you know what I'm saying?
I think ultimately we need, and I've asked UGC for this, and I think they are coming around to providing this, some renderings at least. I mean, I think expecting them to do a full site plan application before the zoning is even done would be a little bit unrealistic. But I do think we need to have some view sheds and what things would look like from especially the neighborhood before you can really make a decision. Dave's behind me.
Oh, wait, my turn?
No,
I think it's your turn.
Thank you. Paul Wilkinson, 16 Russet Hill Road. I thank you very much for showing up on a Saturday in your own time to meet with the residents because you weren't able to make the last planning board meeting. I appreciate that very much, as did everybody else that was at the meeting. I think in large, I hope, unfortunately they're not all here, but the general theme from all of the residents that were there on Saturday to meet with the town manager was they would really prefer not to have that tabletop construction design in either spot because it would be too close. And the 100-foot buffer is just, even if you made it 200, it's not even close to being enough. If you drive up High Street, you can see what a 100-foot buffer looks like behind the homes that are impacted by the development right now. And so, in going up, up to 4 stories, especially on the higher end where it's all green right now, that's the highest end of the whole property out there. So going 4 stories in that area is really going to impact, you'd probably be over the trees potentially in some areas. And so that's a huge concern for the folks up that end, which is myself, and certainly everybody on the lower end, even though it's a better topography maybe, or maybe more challenging for a developer, but maybe for a higher building it's better. They don't want it there either. So I don't think anybody was happy in either spot for many reasons. And what the group was proposing was not that cluster kind of development, but more in a line and building after building in a row, so to speak, closer to the existing development, so that it was more of a part of the existing development, much further away from all the residential properties, and kind of in a line, I think, similar to most of the buildings going up the hill now in that current development. They're one after the other along that street, going from the bottom to the top, and kind of building in the same line and pushing everything up and having that 25 acre or whatever that buffer zone or the property of the town would then take be the open space all behind in a nice big green area still that would protect all the homes and allow for probably some wildlife to maintain in there a little bit, and maybe you could put a walking trail through there that goes all the way through the property down to High Street and connects to the trails that go all the way to Hopkins State Park. I mean, you could probably do something nice if you were able to push it up there. Now, the developer may say that's a much more costly development for me, and I'm not interested in that, and I could certainly understand that. But from a residential standpoint, that's what the residents are looking for, is something, if they need to build there, in a row, much closer to the existing development and away from the homes. I just got a couple quick questions, if I can just have another minute. For the height, so for a 4-story building, either by zoning or by building code, does anybody know what the maximum height would be?
We don't have a translation between stories and feet currently.
Okay.
We could put that in, because we haven't written the zoning yet. Right. So we could.
Yeah, okay. That would be something certainly to consider. Another question, I think at the last meeting, planning board meeting, it was referenced the percent income for affordable was, I thought somebody said 80%. Mm-hmm. And I believe there was a slide at the town meeting from the selectmen, it was either a selectmen meeting or a town meeting, that they presented that showed it was a much lower percentage, either between 30 and 50%, which I think has other benefits probably on the developer side for tax credits purposes and whatnot, but maybe even for the town, I'm not sure. But I'm just wondering if they presented one thing and we heard another thing here, just where maybe, Mike, we can verify that.
Sure. So those are good questions. Thank you, Paul. In terms of the affordability, so to be considered affordable from the state's perspective, and to count towards that affordable housing inventory, a unit has to be affordable to a family making what they consider 80% of the area median income. So as we all know, even at 80%, that's hard for a lot of our seniors. So we have talked with the developer about doing up to 15 units at the 15 of those affordable units at the 30 to 50% income level. Now, it's going to be a net loss for them because they don't get the tax credits. Yep. But they are willing to talk about that. And I think also, you know, we were talking about, you know, the expense for the developer and stuff like that. I think we've been able to demonstrate at least a little bit of creativity in recent years on trying to make the math work in exchange for a better project. So that's certainly something, and we talked a little bit about that on
Yep.
Saturday, you know, some of the things that we could, you know, look at in terms of fees and things of that nature.
Just one last question, sorry. There was an original covenant with this project, right?
Yes,
Yes.
any zoning change would presumably need a corresponding covenant change, which would be a joint vote of the planning board and the board of selectmen. And I presume any zoning change that would successfully go through town meeting would not have trouble getting the corresponding covenant change.
Yeah. And I assume the original covenant would be on file here in the planning department?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, great, thanks.
Hi, Peter Dana, 41 Wilbur Drive. I would just like to say something about the people that live there right now. When I built my house, I believe it was the spring of 1996, and actually, that's when they started construction, when I moved in. So it had started before that. Ashland was in the headlines and had some very, very negative things about Nyanza and things like that. And people who built houses up there took a leap of faith in the city and the future, and we made an investment to live there, and we have lived there ever since. But I don't know how many years into it, all of a sudden, this land came up for, you know, we had big town meetings and the threat of the 40B, and it was zoned way back then. It was basically shoved down our throats. And it was gonna happen, and then the project collapsed, and then unbeknownst to all of us, all these agreements were, that were supposed to have run out of time were continued and allowed to be renewed again. And I think if any of the population had known what was going on behind closed doors, there would have been more of a more modern talking about what was happening, because as you guys know, things have gotten out of control a little bit. Route 135 is, you know, not an easy place to navigate anymore at rush hour, and this is no longer a sleepy town. And I just want the board to understand that the people who live up there have been there a long time, took a leap of faith to move there, bought into the future of the town, and have paid taxes for, you know, 25+ years. So, thank you very
Yeah.
much.
I will say, on one point, as far as the traffic, when you're building senior housing for 62 and up, you're generally not building housing for people who have 9-to-5 jobs and are commuting during rush hour. So the impact during the peak commute times should be very low compared to any other development
I
we can do.
absolutely agree. Out of every, you know, if we're gonna build anything, to at least, I worry about, you know, is the land, if there's an emergency or something, how accessible is this for the, you know, seniors to get, you know, medical treatment, or, you know, it's, those are concerns that I would, but I mean, if we're gonna build anything there, that's the least invasive on the town, absolutely. And I totally agree about the pushing it back and stringing it out, and not making it so much of a concentrated mass. Thank you.
All set?
Mhm.
Okay. Good evening, Mark Lasoni. First of all, welcome Assistant Planner to your first planning board meeting.
Thank you.
We have introduced ourselves pretty well by now. As for the town management, yes, we're gonna be good. Mr. Chairman, I'm gonna say to the person from Whipple Road, what I said to start last planning board meeting. I apologize for saying the attitude, not my backyard, because it wasn't my backyard and it was a place that they were living at, or still living at. But now that I have heard the progress of that Saturday meeting, the town manager went up and spoke to them. It's an open book now. It's transparent, and it's being said. And the zoning, the amendment, and what's going to be planned there. I came into the planning board office, talked to the assistant planner. And then I came in the following day to talk to the town manager. And I know that this is still, as the town manager's told me, in draft form. The plan and whatever it's gonna be on the books is in draft. It's not completely ready yet. So I'm gonna say, what I said to the town manager, I'm gonna say out here in public, I'm willing to put my services forward to help shape this, get it ready for the public, and get it ready for the show. And so when it does actually work, it works for all. So planning board, it's not gonna be that tough. Because 10, 15 years ago, we had the beginnings of the gainer. Let's not shoot a dead horse situation. This horse will be alive and carrying the carriage instead of putting the carriage in front of the horse. The horse is going to be in front of the carriage in the good positive way of doing things. So thank you. Let's hope this goes through. And if it's in their backyard, let's coexist as one happy town. Thank you.
I think, just to echo a lot of what's been said, I think, hey, in a perfect world, and I've said this before, if we had that 10%, if we had affordable housing for seniors, and we had the ability to do it, I would love to keep all of it as green space. I mean, that's very, very important to me personally. And it's finding that balance between what's good for the town overall and advances some of those goals, but at the same time holds our neighborhoods holds them harmless, or as harmless as possible. So, and I agree. I mean, I think the goals are the same in terms of, pushing things back and whatever we need to do. A lot of that might not necessarily happen in zoning. That might have to happen in a development agreement or something like that, because, we might have to talk about a reduction of fees or something in order to reduce the costs so they can do some of the things that they would do that. And I know I would be willing to recommend that to the Board of Selectmen. And ultimately, I think it would be their decision. I think we would probably need to look at doing that anyway for, some of the lower income, pieces like the 30 to 50%. So,
Yeah.
Anyway, that's it.
I know this is getting out of the land use policy, so it's not really our area, but we could also consider if we are getting more affordable than they would otherwise be committed to, of using the CPA affordable housing funds to help buy the affordable restrictions or such.
But yeah, potentially, or I think we have to look at a holistic plan about that affordable money. But
if it makes
sense.
sense.
We have tools. We have tools
It's another
available
tool.
that we can utilize. And like I said, we've demonstrated that we can get creative.
So I just have a couple of more general questions about overall in the RTD. So has the town officially transacted with Gainer for lot 3?
No, that was actually going to be my next update.
Okay, so once you sorry.
Great segue. So we are scheduled to close no later than January 30th. Now, if you remember, as part of that closing, us purchasing the property, which is Lot 3, and then the development restriction on Lot 2 that we were talking about, that 50 to 66% of the land to keep as open space. Bob Gaynor, the landowner, needed to gift 15 acres to the YMCA. And so that transaction happens all at once, and it will happen January 30th, essentially. What needs to happen beforehand is that the planning board needs to receive an A&R plan from Bob that, carves out that acreage. And so he's working on that. Over the break, it was a little bit difficult getting the surveyors and everybody all connected. But they are on schedule to get it to you before your next planning board meeting, which I believe is on the 24th. Is that correct?
Yes.
So, okay. Does that answer your question, Joe?
Yeah, yes.
Yeah. So we should have that property on January 31st.
I'll just say, the idea of having 2 or 3 buildings in a row kind of against the Cirrus apartments, and then any parking infrastructure would be on to the south of that, so that it doesn't push the buildings any closer to the residents, makes sense.
Great.
Yeah, and I know as you get close to the MBTA road, the ground is fairly steep, so that might be kind of difficult to build that way, but it's certainly worth looking at.
Agree 100%. 100%.
Yeah, I agree. Worth looking at.
Yeah, or maybe build like a 2-story building on the resident side and a 3 or 4-story building on the other side, so it's not all of a sudden the sudden height.
I mean,
There's some things like that the problem is it's really hard to get agreement on this when we don't know what's going to go there. And it's hard to look at the text of the zoning and convert that into what can and can't be built. And people are going to say, look at the worst possible case and say, is that really what you want there? Because that's what the zoning allows, and that can be scary.
it's a chicken or the egg type of scenario.
Yeah.
Totally agree. I think it's prudent to look at the worst case scenario in these situations. So again, I agree. I should say that even though they were not done for tonight's meeting, I do expect UGC to be present at next week's Board of Selectmen's meeting with boards and graphics, just basically talking about their company and this potential development and what they're trying, some of their previous developments, their approach, and hopefully we can have some pretty good view sheds of what potential projects could look like from the neighborhood, because I know we're all dying kind of to see what does that look like.
So they're going to be at the Board of Selectmen's meeting. Are they planning to be at our 24th meeting on the 24th of January? Probably doesn't make sense.
Potentially, yeah. Yeah, I think the Board of I think it depends on the Board of Selectmen's reaction to this, because there's going to need to be a development agreement as part of it. But I think that's something that we could potentially pencil in.
I don't know. You would obviously probably want, if they could be here, we'd want them here, right, Preston?
The more the merrier.
Yeah.
Yeah, the more information we can get to paint the pictures, the better.
Yeah. 'Cause the last thing we want is to come up with something that we think is the right answer and have a battle. We want to feel like we have a partnership, not a battle. We want if the abutters are saying this is really bad, and we go to town meeting and they've got the abutters saying it's bad and the town staff and the elected officials saying it's good, that's a really awkward position, and it's not a recipe for success.
And I think, I like to have that kumbaya collaborative, let's reach a consensus kind of feeling on as many things as possible. And like I said, we work really hard to get to that. So I'm hoping for that as well.
And the only other thought is, if we do explore trying to push it in the direction that, the residents have given us feedback on, we do have to be considerate of Cirrus and the people that live there as well. Mm-hmm. And they're abutters too now. And at the end of the day, it's a separate property owner, so there's another party there that's part of that discussion,
Agree.
right?
Yeah, it's
Yeah, I think it's a little different, but
rental units are different because in a situation like that, they're typically,
Sure,
there's
yeah.
higher turnover.
Transient, yeah, and it's to some degree.
And they're, you know, if they don't like it and want to move out,
Well,
they actually can do
so-
that without the
Fair-
same level
yeah,
of pain.
Sure.
as a
Absolutely,
homeowner.
I'm not suggesting
But-
that the serious renters have a bigger say than
Right.
the residents that
But
own
you're right, we
homes.
shouldn't ignore it.
I'm just saying, it is a different property owner of the Cirrus property, and you
Mhm.
know, like, they have to, we wanna have a good relationship there as well,
I
so,
agree.
that's
I
all.
agree. So hopefully, I think in general, everybody, those three goals that I outlined, I think everybody agrees with those. I think we can all
Mhm.
reach consensus on that. Again, devil's in the details. How do we get there in the best way?
now I don't know if I should or not. If I should, I disclose that is my neighborhood. That's my neighborhood, so
It's
I don't know if that
good to
affects,
say, but
you know, my ability to vote on this or not. I don't know.
I don't think that, this is different from like doing a site plan review.
When votes come up.
When the votes come up, I
Yeah,
think that's what
we'll have
John's
to double check on the legal aspect of that. I don't think you have to recuse yourself on
And you
this. but-
might
Not
be-
for the zoning anyway, and really the zoning is what this is all about.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's what we're voting on.
but then when it comes to the site plan, we'll have to see if you're within the right distance, and you also have to, and even if you legally aren't absolutely required to recuse yourself, because the legal definition of butter is something like 300 feet or something, you may decide that, you know, I can't give this an unbiased view, I'm gonna recuse myself. You always have that option on any development. And I can't advise you what you should or shouldn't do on that.
we figured out.
Yeah.
But yeah, we'll make sure we're right legally and ethically and everything. on
That's
that.
what I wanted to make sure of.
All right.
All right, so any questions or any thoughts ahead of time, don't email each other. You know, we know that. You can send them to me or obviously Amanda. And we're going to be working hard on
Don't have
this.
to worry about that with me.
That's right.
So, all right. All right, well, thank you very much. Again, I apologize for not being here at the last meeting, and looking forward to getting a good product here.
Thanks,
All right.
Michael.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Do you wanna say anything about, town planner search?
The
Just
town,
real quick.
town.
Oh, yes, that would
Yeah.
be great if there's an update on
So,
that.
just to give you an update on the town planner search. So, I think given the status of the marketplace right now, I think given the status of where we are as a community and what we're looking at doing, I've engaged actually a professional recruiter to look at, well, hope nobody in other towns are watching, poach the right person. So, and hopefully we should have a profile done, and believe you assigned Dale as the person to review the resumes and stuff like that. Is that correct?
I think.
Okay. And so hopefully that process will be starting really, really soon. Amanda's great. I know she wants, she would like some help though, yeah. But yeah, I will say one thing, this recruiter, grew up in Ashland, went to Marion. So he really wanted to do this, so it's nice.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
All right, it's 8 o'clock. The Ashland Planning Board will hold a public hearing to consider and amend the planning board's fee schedule and add a mailing fee to the design review procedure. A public hearing will be held on January 10th, 2019 at 8 p.m. in the Board of Selectmen's room located in Ashland Town Hall, 101 Main Street, Ashland, Mass. So we're now calling the public hearing to order. We have discussed this informally in the past, so that we were all on the same page and made sure it's worth advertising and going ahead with the public hearing. The idea is to adjust our fees to, for the most part, include the costs of the mailings and advertisements that the projects require. Now, the costs of mailings and advertisements aren't always the same, but Sheila figured, well, this is the approximate average of what they come out to. So over the course of the year, it works out, and it saves a lot of administrative overhead of not having to get a separate bill and then get a check, and it saves a lot of legwork time for everyone in the office. So for site plan review, the fees go up by $25 to accommodate for mailings. There are no required advertisements for site plan review. We are adding a fee for special permit modification because there was not a fee before listed as its own fee. And we're increasing the special permit application fee from $300 to $400. The modification fee is listed as $400 with the note that the board may waive fees if the board deems it to be a minor modification, which is generally true for all fees anyway, but it's stated that way on the fee schedule so that if somebody says, well, this is ridiculous, I'm just making this little tiny change, they know they can ask for a waiver in that case. So that bumps up by $100 because that's both advertising and mailing. Subdivision application, again, these are all increased by $100 to cover mailing and advertising, and a design review fee of $50 is being instituted. It wasn't there before. And then eliminating the separate fees for mailing and advertising. And that is the change that we're talking about. I think I've listed everything. I know we have it in front of us. Is there any quick comment from the board? And then I'll take public comment. I don't think this comes as a surprise to any of us. Okay. Is there any comment from the public on this? I see none. And this was discussed in an open planning board meeting previously. That wasn't part of the public hearing process, but just it was more opportunity for people to hear about it, both in the meeting and people who happen to be watching on TV. So with that said, is there a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes 4-0. Is there a motion to approve the new fee schedule?
So moved.
Seconded?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? That passes 4-0. We have new fees. So that
So
was
this will get updated on the town website and any appropriate place it needs to be?
Yes.
yeah.
Yep.
But now that we've done the public hearing and voted on it, it's official now.
Got it.
So, all right. 50 Magunko Road. Is that what you're here for?
Yes.
All right. 50 Magunko Road, site plan review modification. Let's the applicant get set up and then introduce what's going on here. This is our first discussion on this,
Yes.
so it's new for all of us.
My name is Joyce Hastings. I'm from GLM Engineering.
Thanks, Joyce.
And I am here this evening with Peter Burberry, who is the counsel for the project, and Robert Mitchell, who will be the occupant of user of the property. I represent 50, Ashland 50 Magunko Road LLC. So we filed for site plan modification because the use that will be going in there is a change of use from what you permitted in 2017. In 2017, we came before you for a site plan review for an auto body shop. And at that time, the property was laid out with the existing number of parking spaces that the machine shop had previously had, which had 6 customer spaces, 36 vehicle spaces, and 7 truck spaces. And we have modified the plan to show 10 truck spaces, which will be located along the property line here, and 14 employee spaces, which will be here. And then, by doing that, we have eliminated 25 parking spaces from the original approved site plan. So we've moved this parking spaces into this area here. We're also, in this application, providing a salt bin. It's a covered salt bin that will be located at the rear of the property. In this area here. This area that's the light color is all existing gravel. The dark color is existing pavement. The light color is existing concrete. And we've been to conservation to get an approval for the work that has been done out here, and we had an approval with the salt bin located over here. Since that approval, we're moving the salt bin over in this location. It takes us further outside the buffer zone, or further from the edge of the wetlands than previously approved. But we still have to go back to conservation to show them we're changing the location. Everything else remains the same from what we went to conservation for. In addition to that, we're adding inside the existing building, they're putting a truck wash bay, and with that truck wash bay, we're adding a slot drain in the middle, and it will be a closed system. Basically the water, when they wash the trucks, goes into the slot drain through an oil gas separator, into an oil gas sediment separator, and then into a storage tank inside the building, which will then go into the system that has all the filters and further cleans the water. So that will be the tight tank system that will handle anything that comes out of the wash bin inside the building. And those are really the only changes. The change, again, from auto body to basically it's a trucking company where they keep their trucks on site, and then reducing the number of parking spaces, adding 1 outside storage bin, and we'll be showing tanks that we will go through and get approved by the plumbing inspector and the Board of Health.
So the existing gravel, concrete, asphalt is staying gravel, concrete, asphalt?
Yes.
And so it was going, approved to be a auto body work, and what is the new use?
It's a trucking company. They have trucks that go out and move earth around, and the trucks come back to the site at night.
Okay.
So, one question to start. So you'd said that you'd gone before Concom
Yes.
previously, and the salt bin was...
A couple of months ago, yes.
And the salt bin was, when you
It was
got their approval, it was located in that other portion of the site. there.
right where
Yeah.
it was shown before. And as you can see, the things that they asked us to provide, we put in boulders here along the 25-foot no-touch zone,
Mhm.
keeping in mind that this site was very heavily used before we came to it.
Yeah.
So the owner now has spent a lot of time cleaning things up. He's installed a berm along the edge of the gravel parking so that nothing can get from whatever's happening here towards the edge of the wetlands.
Mhm.
He's on top of the berm. We have proposed some plantings working with conservation.
Okay.
So there were some conditions that they placed on the project to permit what we're doing.
So but where I'm getting at is Concom okay with the salt bin going there?
Well,
Even in
again,
lieu of the fact that
They
you've
were
done-
okay with it going here. We've moved it further away from the wetland resource area over here, but we still have to, we will still go back to them to show them where we've moved it.
So what they're saying is they expect Concom will be happy with the change, but they haven't gotten that verified yet.
Okay.
And
But it
that's, the
will-
reason I
it will
expect
go
they'll be
before
happy with the
Concom.
change is because it was
Right.
closer before, we've moved it further away
Yeah.
now.
Yeah, it
But-
sounds like you've got good reason for that.
Okay.
And we could condition that, you know, following up with Concom as part of any kind of approval too,
Right.
so.
Okay.
This was really our first, well, we went to conservation first because we needed to go to conservation first, because the conservation was first, then you're next, and then we'll finish with plumbing and Board of Health after you all.
Okay.
Can I just add too, I included in your packets, an email from the Board of Health Director with his comments, regarding the tight tank and, you know, what will have to be done for that part.
Yes.
Building had no comments and conservation also had no comments, in terms of the site plan modification before the planning board.
Right, so I've had a conversation with the Board of Health,
Mark,
with Mark Orm, and conceptually, he has no problem with what we're doing, but he had not, for some reason, had not seen a plan yet. So he saw that just got the plan today, and his comments were, we're in a septic system, so we need to have a tight tank that's associated with this, and he's seen that we have several here, so we will finish with him, but conceptually, he seems to be fine with it.
Yeah, because I remember from 2017, we did talk about the septic, which is
Out front.
located up front there,
Yes.
that cell with 3 circles in
Mhm.
it, right?
That's the tank, there's a field in front of that.
Towards Mogunko.
Right, and
Where's-
before they bought the property, they had a Title V inspection. So we will provide that to the Board of Health to show him that,
So when you say before they bought the property, that was between machine shop and
Yes.
proposed mechanic garage space,
Correct.
right? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Cool. And so then there's, it's a proposed retaining wall on that L.
so that retaining wall's actually been constructed.
Okay, got
Um,
it.
And was happening was, for some reason, there was a steep slope left between the two properties that was eroding down
Mhm.
onto the abutting property. So
Got
what they had done is gone in and basically stabilized the slope with a retaining wall
Got it.
to protect the abutter. That proposed retaining wall was shown on the plan that was submitted to conservation, because it was in the 100-foot buffer zone.
Got it. And so the spaces that were removed from the site, you said there were 25 spaces that
So
have been.
in my package that I had submitted, there was the previous site plan. It shows a series of parking across this area here. We're in 2 zones, so we removed all the parking that was in the rail transit zone. So they had a series of parking here, they had 6 truck parking spaces lined out here, and then there was the customer parking in the front. I think it's the last page. Thank you.
Yeah, so the old plan where it shows the customer parking, that's the part that is asphalt in the front.
Yes.
And you've also got a bunch that is concrete. Was the concrete already there?
No, so this is this is gravel here.
Oh, that's gravel.
Yeah, colors didn't show us change. So
Okay.
this will be, when we expand the parking, they're gonna expand it in that way so that it's gravel and landscaped around it.
Okay. So I thought gravel was the yellowish color.
It was,
So
yeah,
that's
it
just a
should,
mistake.
the colors didn't,
Okay. Okay, so that's just all right, that makes sense then. Are there any concerns from the planning office on this? Anything that particular that we need to pay attention to that you've noticed, or anyone on the staff side?
No, not that, we've noticed that we met, with the applicant,
Mid-December.
right, in December to, clarify that you were coming back for a modification, and so it seemed pretty straightforward, so.
Yeah.
And just one last question. So this is zoned industrial, correct?
Yes.
Yep,
Yep.
and so there's no,
So this is an allowed use in that
Yep.
industrial
Yep.
district.
I was just thinking of noise, idling, trucks, some of that stuff, but it's inside of the rules that are already in place around that zoning, so.
There's already, generally, there's a 5-minute limit on idling anywhere in Massachusetts by state law, I believe,
Mhm.
so. It's not well enforced, but. Yeah, I don't see anything of particular concern here. Is there any comment from the public on this? Yeah, I don't see this, usually with site plan review, we end up having, a peer review of the changes. I'm not sure, that's really needed, because I think, as far as any of the water recycling system, that needs a technical review, but I think the Board of Health is covering that. I would be very concerned about any salt bin of things leaking out and causing environmental damage to the surrounding wetlands. But Conservation Commission is looking at that.
They asked that we have, it's on a concrete pad, and that we have a concrete apron in front of it, and that salt bins have to be covered anyway, but they wanted to ensure that we were covering it.
So it sounds like the parts that require more technical review than we're doing tonight are handled by other parts of the town. I don't see really anything else for us to do on this. I don't see a
That's
reason
fine.
we couldn't approve this tonight unless somebody else sees something. Let's take a quick look at the previous decision. I just wanna skim through the conditions.
Yeah, like Amanda said, on condition of Concom's approval or whatever.
Yeah, let's, if we look at the conditions on the previous decision, I'm just thinking we'll probably wanna incorporate the same or similar conditions. And the very first one says, this certificate of approval shall not take effect until all required permits and necessary approvals from the conservation and health departments are obtained by the applicant, which is exactly what I was saying on the other technical aspects.
Perfect.
Peter, do you have a copy of your?
Yeah, the only thing I don't know about in the previous decision is G about as-built plans. I would assume we would want something like that still.
So when, we would have to also supply an as-built to the Conservation Commission, so it can be the same.
Right, I'm just,
For the tank and everything?
yeah, there's technical wording in the old decision about a Massachusetts registered land surveyor and
That's standard.
in
Right,
a
and-
state plane NAD
Oh, well,
83
we could
feet
take
for the
that one out.
geo-referenced CAD file. And we
Yeah.
do like that for the town.
We can do that, but the site plan
GIS.
isn't, yeah. I'll let you decide how you
Yeah,
wanna do that.
usually we do
Okay.
ask for
We
that.
can do that.
So it's, because we try to have a fairly comprehensive GIS system in the town that
Understood.
can be very useful at times. So, yeah, I would think, we approve this, this is coming in as a modification, not as a new
Correct.
site plan. So I believe the modification would also need to be filed with the Registry of Deeds normally, the approval.
I believe so, yes.
Yeah, so, okay, yeah, so we would retain all of these conditions.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see any need to add any new ones.
Sorry, one last one. In terms of the salt bin, the construction where it's proposed, looks like there's some clearing of trees that would have to happen.
No, it's all on gravel, it's all on the existing disturbance. This whole area is all gravel.
This is where it's gonna go. So,
So there
And
might have
they've
been,
already
it
been
might have been a
removed
change since then, yeah.
since the imaging, okay.
And that's one of the reasons we went to conservation.
It's probably, yeah, this off of 17 probably
Yes.
changes between there, okay. 17 approval, okay.
Okay, all right, this isn't a public hearing, it's just a discussion, so there's no hearing to close, so it just simply be a vote to approve the site plan modification with the same conditions as in the original decision.
So moved.
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? That passes 4-0.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
One of the less painful
Good luck.
site plans here.
Thank you.
Good luck.
So this is,
Okay, perfect, thank you.
All right.
I didn't draft a decision for preparation for this situation.
Yeah, usually we don't vote on a decision the first night.
Right.
But sometimes it's simple and we do.
Mm-hmm.
You can draft a decision and we will sign it, we can sign it at the next meeting, or you can, if people come in and sign it beforehand, that's fine.
Okay.
Thank you.
But, you know, if we handle something at the first meeting, that means
Mhm.
there's no deadline,
Right.
or no, the deadline's fairly far out,
Mhm.
so we can probably sign it at the next meeting unless they, are itching to get things moving.
Right.
We can try and come in and sign it.
Okay.
All right, our next item of business is a lot release for 25 Haven Way, Unit 11 at Leah Estates. We have done at least 2 other lots over the years on Leah Estates, doing a lot re-release. This was added to the agenda very late because it was not anticipated, but there's a closing on a mortgage that can't happen without the lot being released, and it appears that a lot of the lots were not properly released when this development was done. So, if it would be nice if we could just do the paperwork and re-release the entire thing if it's the same filing fees, but
I think it's 150 per lot,
Oh,
so.
well, the filing fee, the question is what the fee is with registering it with the Registry of Deeds, not what the fee is for the town.
Oh, okay. I'll have to check to see what the fee would be to
But-
register it.
But at this point, I think it's on the agenda for just this one, but
Mhm.
if we get another one after this,
Mm-hmm.
we might want to look at simply re-releasing the entire subdivision so that we
Mhm.
don't have any more, because this is at least the 3rd
Right.
re-release, which says to me somebody didn't file these when they were first done, and we're gonna get, as these turn over, we're gonna get more and more of these showing up when the banks do the check.
Right.
So, that being the case, Leah Estates is long done, we have no security, there's no reason that I know of not to vote to re-release this. They've paid the town fee for doing a lot re-release. Is there a motion to re-release 25 Haven Way, which is unit number 11?
Seconded?
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? That passes 4-0. Okay, on the agenda, we have approval not required for subdivision of land, Magunko Transit LLC, parcel of land off the MBTA access road. The town manager addressed this item earlier. The actual plan is not ready yet, and so this will be continued, this will be put on our agenda again for our next meeting. This would be for the YMCA lot, to carve that out as a separate lot. It's not subdividing, it's an approval not required. Which means it doesn't go through the subdivision process. But, yeah, it's subdividing.
Okay.
It's just, in Massachusetts law, either, when you change a lot line, it's either a subdivision, which goes through a public hearing process and all of that,
More extensive, yeah.
or it's approval not required, meaning everything already meets the legal definitions for lots and you're not creating new roads. And that simply you show up and we say, yes, it meets the zoning, and there's no, and you get it pretty much automatically. And so that's the process they're going for that. All right, we have reports, future meetings, and oh, we also have the December 13 minutes. Let's get that done first, and then, which is down at towards the back of our folders. This is fairly small print.
Yes.
So, row 16. So, she explained that Lot 2, owned by Mr. Gaynor, currently has 3 zones, and the proposed zoning change will increase the allowed density in Lot 2. Obviously, you watched the tape, but we're only proposing changing the zoning in terms of density for parcel 2, or Lot 2, correct?
Right.
So, just for clarity.
Okay, I'll
That's the
clarify
new
that.
issue. Row 16.
Thank you.
Yeah, in lot 2.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I'm just saying at the end of density.
Yeah, that's correct.
And then, a little bit confused, row 18 through 20, sentence beginning, Mrs. Page said the proposed design will apportion more open space, improve the buffer for the abutters, and with a special permit, increase the allowed building height to over 2 stories. We discussed it tonight, it was 3
Yeah.
stories going to 4 stories.
Yeah,
So if she misspoke and those are the factual minutes, then it's correct, but my understanding is.
I would change that 2 to a 3.
Okay.
She's not here to object.
Right. Over 3 stories.
But yeah, that's more accurate to what was proposed, whether it's,
Yeah.
she spoke correctly or not, it was clarified, but at some point.
So Road 26, 27, Peter Danaher. 40 Overdrive asked if the restriction that stipulates only 25% of project can be completed each year is still in effect. So, I think this is trying to reference the,
Rate of development bylaw.
rate of development bylaw. So, asked if the rate of development bylaw, I mean, it needs
Yeah,
major work.
if you put
Yeah,
just
that one.
rate of development bylaw as a adjective before restriction, then that clarifies it.
Mhm.
But I don't think he remembered that was the term, but that's fine. Yeah,
Is that,
it is still in effect,
yeah.
but we're into it now, so.
Mhm.
And there are ways of waiving it, I believe, so, I don't know. I think on line 115, when we're talking about the town planner hiring process, it says Mr. Buchanan and Mr. Rubertone offered to participate, and then I think we need to say something like, and the rest of the board agreed to have them do so.
That's fine with me.
Because without that, it leaves off the action.
That sounds good.
Lots of action in our minutes. That's what we don't have going on right now.
The board discussed the land use and development liaison committee. Was there a brief discussion of what the land use and development committee, their charge is? I think you spoke briefly, put a sentence to that about what the intention of that committee is for. So like on row 102, like, I don't put words in your mouth, but I believe there was some, you know,
For the minutes,
if you didn't say it, you didn't say it. but-
well, for the minutes, all I can think of right now that would sound good would be to after Development Liaison Committee, which is being established by the Board of Selectmen.
It's fine. It just gives a little bit more context.
Yeah.
For historical.
Then anyone can go check their minutes.
Perfect. Okay, I'm good.
All right, is there a motion to move the minutes of December 13th, 2018 as amended?
So moved.
Seconded.
in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? That passes 4-0. All right, and now if there are any member reports, anyone has something they need to say? Acting Planning Director report?
So we have received two applications that will be on for our next meeting. And
What are they?
so we received preliminary plans for Village of America Phase 8. As well as preliminary plans for Village at Clocktown. And so I am in the process of circulating those to department heads and asking for clarifications on the plans, some corrections to be made.
Phase 8.
That'd be the commercial mixed-use section?
Mm-hmm.
Are they proposing to go ahead with the commercial mixed use then? Is that what they're?
They haven't
That-
clarified what they're trying to do.
So what did they
Okay.
submit to you?
Plans, and then like the preliminary plan form just filled out.
But what's on the plans? Is it a commercial? Is it
They're proposing like 3 lots, and putting in a cul-de-sac to the right of that commercial part.
With,
So with 2 lots, the cul-de-sac, and then the 3rd lot would go around the cul-de-sac and include that commercial portion.
well, that'll be interesting to see.
And the Clocktown is located over by, where's that parcel?
It's the,
That's where Clocktown Liquors was?
no,
Just
it's where
down.
the public safety building
Right,
is
that's what
going.
that's what I thought.
Where we at one point had thought they were going to be donating the entire parcel to the town. It's looking less like that's the
Right,
case.
near the
so we'll-
cemetery
Yeah,
Yeah,
on 135?
it's the very really pitched piece of ground.
Right on
in between-
135.
yeah,
Yeah.
I know,
lots of
sure.
The
wetlands.
car wash.
That's where
and,
Clocktown Liquors was.
Oh, it is?
Way, way back when, yes.
Okay. I never went there, so.
Neither did I, but I was a little kid.
All right,
It'll be interesting to see those now.
I
I'm
guess,
sure Mark remembers that.
One of my homes.
I guess our next meeting is January 24th. Unless there's anything else, is there a motion to adjourn at 8:40?
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.